Brendan Telfer joins us as he does the BTE, courtesy of JK's World of Golf. Brendan, let's talk about, Sinner to start with, mate, and another drug test positive and another excuse.
This is another bad look. The World Anti-Doping Agency have been getting some really bad press lately. I don't see their name anywhere here, but that's in itself a kind of an indictment on them. I mean, this stinks a little bit and looks and smells a little bit, a bit like what we saw not so long ago in the New York Times. unearthed the story about the 23 Chinese swimmers who tested positive for a banned substance. But it never saw the light of day, this case, until the New York Times reporter, and I think another reporter from PBS in America, got a sniff of this story and discovered that these swimmers went on to win medals, some of them at the last Olympic Games, and some were back again this time around in Paris. And the swimmers were basically let off because there was no intention on their part to cheat. They had the misfortune to be dining in a restaurant somewhere that had some banned substance on the walls. And this is sort of a bit like this as well with this guy Sinner, Jannik Sinner, one of the favourites for the singles title next week at the US Open where it starts, along with Carlos Alcaraz. He was tested twice positively for a banned substance, a thing called clocetabol or something I can't say. I've never heard of it before, but it's on the banned list. And his excuse, according to the International Tennis Integrity Unit, who apparently got involved in this, don't ask me why this organisation was involved, but it was, that there was no intention on his part to cheat, and therefore it was unintentional, so therefore they haven't suspended him. But as to how it happened, again, it's sort of stretching credibility a bit. I mean, it just defies belief, actually, that he says, it's just one of these things that has had nothing much to do with me. A bit like the case many years ago where I can remember a 5,000 metre gold medalist at the Olympic Games tested positive for a banned substance, and this guy's name was Dieter Bowman, a German, and he looked at everything in his life and said, no, the only thing I can come up with is it must have been in my toothpaste.
That's right, yeah, I remember, that was...
And so now what we're seeing is if there is a reasonably sort of tenuous excuse that a sport can put forward, that's enough to get the guy off or the player off. Whereas back in, not so long ago, 10, 20 years ago, it didn't matter how it got into your system. If it got into your system from you, you were to blame. Whether it was, something to do with a cough medicine that had some pseudoephedrine in it, which you didn't know about, that you had a cold and you took it, too bad. You went down. Like this guy, he claims Bowman was in his toothpaste. But he couldn't beat the rap, and he had to go down, and eventually he retired from the sport and was sort of kind of marred for his whole career from that point on. But this guy, Sinner, these things just happen. He says his fitness teacher bought some sort of massage oil, gave him a massage, and apparently the banned substance was in the massage oil.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Brendan, look, do you know what it is, mate? It is all of these sports are freaked out because they know the whole of the credibility of the sport is on the line. That is why the Olympics look the other way. That's why the Russians are there. That is why the Chinese are there. Usain Bolt, every member of the relay team gets tested positive. He doesn't. Look, I mean, some of these sports are riding such a fine line that if the Australian Open champion in tennis is tested positive for drugs just before the US Open, look, what do you think is
not a good look?
None of us are going to believe any of it anymore, are we?
And the tennis people are basically saying, off the record, I'm sure, and I can remember this was with Carl Lewis when he tested positive at the US Olympic trials way back
88,
about 1988.
Yeah, before Seoul.
Before Seoul. But the feeling was that the Olympic Association, the IOC themselves, didn't want all of the superstars of the Olympics being missing from the Olympics because of drugs they were taking, and so these tests were just overlooked. And this again looks a bit like this. I mean, I'm sure the US Tennis Open organisers are mightily relieved that Sinner is going to be playing next week in New York even though by the sound of it, he should be banned. I mean, he's as guilty as Sinner in this case, forgive the pun. But why else would the organisers from the Indian Wells, one of the top tennis tournaments in the world outside of the Grand Slams, why would they take his prize money off him and deprive him of these 400 world ranking points if he was innocent?
There you go.
You don't go around taking prize money off winners of tennis tournaments because they've won. You take it off it because they've done something wrong according to the rules of the sport. And no one's explained that. Why have they taken the prize money off the guy and stripped him of his world ranking points if he's innocent? And where's the World Anti-Doping Agency on all of it?
Well, the World Anti-Doping Agency agreed with the Chinese version of themselves, WADA, that 23 athletes at a training facility happened to walk through a contaminated room. What is a contaminated room doing at your training facility, Brendan? I mean, it's nonsense, mate. It's utter nonsense, isn't it? And so, it's the same as, Russians and Belarusians competing at the Olympics in a different tracksuit. I read an article on the BBC, actually, yesterday that you should read, and it was about a 1984 German woman. I can't remember what her name was, but she was actually West German, not East German. And it's just going through the systematic doping that they went through, both West and East Germany, competing in a geopolitical stage, on a geopolitical stage, as well as obviously a sporting one. And the drugs that these athletes were given, 20 or 30 different injections a day, pills to take, they didn't know what the hell they were. It was just endemic. And I don't know whether it's actually any different now. I just wonder whether or not these organisations have just almost given up.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's two ways you can look at it. I mean, I think I raised this point as well. The fact that there were very few world records broken in either swimming or track and field at the Paris Olympics as of a couple of weeks ago might lead some to think, including me, that a lot of the top sportsmen and women these days are off the juice because the science now available can pick up stuff that you think previously no one was even aware of existed. And so that would account for why we didn't see a spate or a handful of world records, which usually come at the Olympics. But I don't know. How do we know? We can only speculate. But these sort of stories, the ones like the Chinese swimmer, and now this story here about the world's number one or number two tennis pro, I think from memory, Sinner went to number one in the world rankings about 3 or 4 months ago. He might be number two now behind Alcaraz. Doesn't matter. He's one of the favourites next week in New York. It's a distinctly un-Italian name, but he represents Italy. I guess that's where he's born and where he's lived. And it's such a bad look. And I keep saying, where's the World Anti-Doping Agency? And this outfit called the International Tennis Integrity Unit has given the green light for Sinner. I know. I don't know who's on that board or what they're up to. But anyway, we can only keep asking questions.
How much are you looking forward to this All Blacks double test series in South Africa?
Yes, of course I am, yeah. I mean, I don't know whether it's occurred to you, but there's a very uncanny resemblance here to what happened 2 years ago with the All Blacks. Remember, in 2022, Argentina came to New Zealand, and hey, guess what? We thumped them 53-3 or something in that first test, and they turned around and beat us. They squared the series with us.
No, hang on. No, your facts are completely wrong here, Telf. I'm sorry to say. So what happened was we went to South Africa, then we came back and we lost to Argentina in Christchurch, the first test after we came back from Africa. Then we bashed them in Hamilton.
Yeah, well, hold on. Where was when they went to Africa 2 years ago, the year before the Rugby World Cup?
Yeah, we lost to Ireland at home. So we lost to
Ireland, was it? Sorry,
yeah,
Ireland.
Ireland.
Remember, Foster's job was on the line.
Yep.
And they had this 2-test assignment in South Africa, which seemed beyond them, really, given the way they'd played here.
And we got smashed at Nelspruit. Yeah. And then we went up there
well, I don't think we were smashed. It was 21-12.
We were physically dominated in that game, mate.
Yeah. And then we went to Ellis Park, where it's a bit of a graveyard for visiting teams, and seen for all money. Remember the stories about how the All Blacks were having meetings during the week, and what's his name, Razor Robertson was waiting in the wings, had been given the go-ahead to take over from the All Blacks when they got back, and Robinson was in South Africa organising it all, apparently.
Right. Yep.
And then the All Blacks turned on a performance like the All Blacks did the other day, and for the first 15 minutes of that test last week, and won the match, and Fozzie was safe for the World Cup. I mean, clearly Robertson's job's not on the line here, win, lose or draw. He's safe, and so he should be. But I think it's a really tough assignment. I mean, I presume they will stay. You would hope they will stay pretty much closely to the 15 that they put onto the field last week against Argentina for that first 50 minutes. And that means Perenara, who I've had reservations about this year. I think they will have to start with him because I think the first test is in South Africa, isn't it, next week? It's not in Cape Town.
No, it's up in altitude, yeah.